and I do two jobs really. So one of the things that I do is work in schools as a careers advisor. So I've sort of been on the front line, if you like, working with young people as they try to work and navigate their way around COVID. And I also head up education and schools at Not Going to Uni. Generation COVID has been massive. And actually, as of May 2021, so last month, the number of young people in employment has fallen by 310,000, which has been 8%, which has been a huge amount of young people that have lost their jobs or lost their apprenticeship opportunities. And alongside that, we've got people that are leaving education, either at year 13 or at the end of their graduate studies, who are facing challenges that we've never seen before, that have never been present in the early career space. So actually trying to navigate them as employers is really difficult, but trying to navigate them as young people is actually potentially even more difficult, because all the opportunities that you had maybe thought about or wanted to go into suddenly aren't there anymore, or if they are, they've become more competitive, and that is a tricky market to navigate. So I'm going to pass over to the people that were actually here to listen to, because it's not me that's going to be telling you about what's been going on for Generation COVID. It is the young people themselves. So here on the panel with me, I've got Jamie, Alessandro and Phoebe, who are going to talk to us about what's been going on for them over the past 12 months, the challenges they've faced, and actually how either the businesses they've worked in have been able to help them, or how they feel like businesses and employers can move forward and help young people that are trying to get into the workplace at different levels within their early career journey. So if I start with you, Phoebe, can you tell us a little bit about you and what it is that you do at the moment?
Of course. So I currently work on a luxury yacht in London, and I also run a podcast called Not For Everyone, which is a podcast which interviews people who haven't been to university, and we talk about their career journey. So luxury yachting, obviously you would assume it's traveling and everything to do with that, and that has been majorly impacted by COVID. But I was lucky to secure a job locally in London, which means I've had a secure job throughout this lockdown, which has been incredible, and I'm very thankful for it.
Amazing. One of the lucky ones. I like it. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Alessandro, can you tell us a little bit about what you've been up to for the last 12 months?
So I've just finished college, so I was doing 3 A-levels in biology, chemistry and maths, and I just applied to university in October, and I'm hoping to go to university in September to study natural sciences at Bath. So I had to do a lot of sort of like CV building online, and I missed a lot of the social experience of college, so it's been a bit different, but
So one of the potentially, well, some might argue unlucky ones who have had to do teacher assessments as opposed to doing exams and things like that. We'll speak about that in a moment. Thank you. And Jamie, can you tell us a little bit about you and what you've been up to for the last 12 months?
So I'm a degree apprentice doing civil engineering and environmental management, and I've been working from home for just before the lockdown. Ironically, the first time the pandemic opened up, our manager said, if we work from home for 2 weeks, we'll be alright. And a year and a bit later, I'm still working from home. Luckily, I got a nice chair now, though. But yeah, I think, a lot of it's changed in the sense of, I'd say, like others said, the social side and the aspects of that, and walking around my house rather than walking around an office when I need to stretch my legs.
Okay, that's really interesting actually. So we've got, all three of you have had a completely different 12 months in terms of the industries you work in and the level, I guess, of your education and your career that you're at, which is fantastic. Thank you all for introducing yourselves there. So firstly, I'd like to just touch on how, and Alessandro, you spoke about it a little bit actually, how COVID has impacted you in terms of your career or college, but also socially. What things have you found have been quite difficult over the last 12 months? And I think if we start with you, Alessandro, because you've already touched on it, that would be fantastic.
So I would say the most major part was the idea that you go to college every day and you see people, and you don't necessarily have to schedule that in to see a person. Like, there's just going to be people there. You're going to have some social time. I think when we moved to online learning, it was like you had to go out of your way to speak to friends and stuff. Like, although that is an issue, but it just wasn't as natural. So I was lucky enough to have some close friends, and we would call regularly and have little catch-ups, but it's just kind of not the same. We found we became very it was sort of very groupy. I didn't get to meet as many people as I would normally in college. I just had my friends that I made in the first few months of college, and then kind of stuck with them because I couldn't really meet new people. So that was one of the big things that I missed.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point, and I think it must be so difficult. It sounds like you were quite lucky in having that close group of friends, but if you don't have that circle, there are some people that maybe wouldn't have had that interaction at all. Phoebe, how have you found it in terms of socially? I imagine working on a yacht would usually be very people orientated.
Well, it has been very different in the past year. I obviously moved to London having never lived in London, so I knew nobody. And the boat that I'm on is just myself. So it was very isolating during the actual lockdown periods. But other than that, we still had guests on board because it was allowed. So it was pretty much normal. But from a social aspect in my life, it was completely isolating.
Yeah, I can imagine. So how did you meet people?
Online, really. I think social media is a huge thing now, and you can meet people online, and it's incredible. And I've been very lucky. I sort of dove in the deep end and put myself out there, and I've managed to meet some really nice people.
Good, that's great. I think the social media world gets a bit of a bad rap, but actually there are lots of positives that can be taken from it. It sounds like that's been the case for you.
Exactly. It depends how you use it.
Absolutely, I agree. Okay, cool. And Jamie, how about you? How have you found from a social aspect, alongside your apprenticeship, how has it been for you over the last sort of 12 to 18 months?
So doing a degree apprenticeship anyway, we don't get the what they call the uni experience, because if I get hungover, I've got to work the next day, so it's not the same kind of atmosphere. But I would say during the last year, it's been a lot in my work and even with my social group. It's been a lot of trying to do stuff online, being able to I planned some quizzes for my work, for random people online, for friends, to try and keep myself entertained. And I think those kind of little things worked for the first few months, and then just got a bit more tedious a bit further on. So I think socially, until the lockdown eased, it was a lot of, as others said, just trying to talk to certain people, make new friends, but just remember the part that you probably can't see them for however long. I tried to keep as active as possible. I did start running, which I wouldn't recommend to anyone. Hurt my toes, just to keep myself mentally there. But I tried to keep myself as active as I could. But socially, I think it kind of paused, but as others said, it kind of helped you work out who's really there and who talks to you and how many extra things you can do, and just be able to talk on social media and stuff always helped.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice highlight there for silver linings. Thank you. Alessandra, if I can just come back to you quickly, because you're the only one here who's really in full-time education, or was, or has been, over the COVID period. From a perspective of grades and exams, how has it been during COVID? Has it been quite difficult for you, or how have you found it?
Well, it's a big question. It's a lot of I know this whole pandemic has been a lot of unknown, but especially on my half, exams were cancelled 3 months before they were about to be ramped up, and that was following 3 months of them being exams are going ahead, they're constantly changing their mind. That was the big worry. And then when they cancelled exams, it was another 2 months before we actually found out how exams were going to be assessed, how we were going to be assessed, sorry. And then after that, it kind of kept changing on a bi-weekly basis. So it was kind of hard to keep up to on track of how we're being assessed. But I think my college did make that easier for us.
Yeah, I think the schools and colleges have worked really hard to make it understandable. But like you say, it has been just uncertain for everyone, but especially when you're going through year 13, where what happens in year 13 actually dictates what happens next for you in terms of your career and your education. So I can imagine it'd be really difficult. Okay then, so on the flip side then, how would you feel from an employer's perspective, or for you guys, how do you feel about your employment prospects now that we are sort of coming out of the other side of COVID? I don't know if we just start with you, Jamie. I don't know how you thought your apprenticeship, or where you thought it was going to lead versus now. Are you still hopeful that you're on track?
Well, yeah, I think during this lockdown has made companies realise so our work started doing flexible working and being able to adapt around people's lifestyles and schedules, Because before, when you was working with somebody in the office and they had to drop their kid off, you know they're going to be in after 9. But now they can probably get home earlier, or they may have to do something else in between which they've rushed through, which normally they can do during the time. So I think from an employer's side, I think they've been thrown in the deep end and had to adapt, had to change. But the prospects of working on different jobs, which is what a key thing in my area is that I've probably had more options, because they can't just look at who's free. They've got to really think about who needs the experience, what experience is going. And so I've been working on a completely different project to anyone else in my work, but just because that opportunity came during the lockdown, well, just before the lockdown, and then they kind of went, oh, it's going to start in August, would you like to do it? And I was like, oh yeah, that sounds good. But I think after that, it's going to be a lot more. So I'm on Teams all day, and I'm working with people not in my office up north, and I think they're going to have to try and adapt and get around that and learning a lot more. But it's still going to take time. And our office, they're talking about carry on flexible working, so we don't go in 5 days a week. But even then, you don't know who's going to be in the office. So I think it's going to take time for any company. But I think for an employer coming in, or a new person coming in, it's going to be the lack of knowing what they probably should have known in this year. So they may have not learned 100% of what they should have, and the new employees, we're going to have to come in, and I'm going to have to remember not to say, why don't you know that, and actually help teach them. So it's the side of me doing my job every day to a new person coming in and them questioning something which I'll just think's silly. So I think from that side, it's going to take obviously time to change, but we don't want to throw everyone in the deep end just because. Yeah.
I think it's interesting because something that I've really witnessed is the change in opportunities for young people. So where they usually would have done work experience, that hasn't happened. Those sorts of things. So when those young people are then joining the workplace as an apprentice or whatever it might be, actually that might be their first time in the workplace as an employee, yeah. which is crazy. Alessandro, I don't know. I know that you were one of the year who did miss out on work experience. So how do you feel about your employment prospects when you are at the stage where you're looking for work?
It's hard because there weren't any sort of physical work experience programs that you could go on at that time, and you could make up for them with doing like online stuff, but it's really not the same, and I feel like you don't learn the same sort of skill set you would from going in person and being able to question people. I think that's the biggest thing we missed out on, is not having a person there to ask questions to and to learn from. It was quite like difficult. I think career prospects wise, we've missed out on again a lot of careers programs and sort of information days and things like that, where you just be able to explore different opportunities and stuff. But it has been a little bit difficult on that end.
Are you quite hopeful, and I know we're talking a few years down the line now when you do come out with your degree, that you'll still be able to move into the workplace in the sector you want to work within?
I am hopeful. I don't think we're going to have, I think my year especially, we've got a lot of deferred students from last year, so I think there's going to be a larger graduating number in my cohort, you might say, in 3 years' time. So it does worry me slightly that it might be a bit more competitive, but then I think that's just something that has to be taken into consideration when applying for jobs. Yeah,
absolutely. I think the thing is that the employment landscape is competitive, and yes, it's going to be more competitive, but it's not impossible. And I think businesses are also aware of what's going on. Of course they are. We're all very much aware of what's been happening, and can take that into consideration as well. So from your perspective then, Phoebe, how has it been for you? Obviously, you actually found a job during the COVID time, which is amazing, and relocated during that time. You're a busy lady. But how do you feel about your employment prospects?
I think the most important thing is sort of networking and actually just being in a workplace, because I'm fortunate enough to the person who I'm currently working for has offered me a new role, which would usually require a degree or further qualifications. So I think networking within a role, and I think it's the soft skills that you learn, possibly rather than the qualifications that employers might be looking for in the future, simply because this whole COVID situation has disrupted all the exams and people graduating. I think how I see it is employers will be looking for those sort of personalities rather than qualifications, because you want to be able to spend a day with these people, don't you?
Yeah, we spend a lot of time at work. It's good to be able to communicate and all those soft skills. Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I always say to the young people I work with is that the qualification will get you to the door, but the skills and the personal qualities will be the thing that actually gets you in. I think it's so important that it's a mixture of all three and not just, a fancy piece of paper, as important as they are.